huge win for the Fever over the Storm on Tuesday. How'd they do it, and why was it so important? I'll tell you something you didn't know. Plus, the road ahead for the Fever in front of their most important weekend of the season. And you got to hear a lot about the Fever's hardship players. You'll get it all today on Locked On Women's Basketball's Fever Report version on Friday.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. It's Fever Friday here on Locked On Women's Basketball, where we talk about the Indiana Fever. I'm Tony East, hosting this version of Locked On Women's Basketball. I've covered the Fever for the 9 and Forbes at times since 2020, the Wubble, and today a huge weekend is coming for the Fever, given their two opponents, given the standings, and we're going to talk about what it means. We're also going to talk about the state of their hardship reality as they continue to cycle through these players. You got a lot of details to learn there, but we got to start with what I would consider a massive and kind of important for lots of reasons win for the Fever over the Seattle Storm on Tuesday, which sets the scene for this weekend, and we'll get into a lot of Sparks, a lot of Valkyries, a lot of Aliyah Boston. If you are a frequent listener of these Fever Fridays here, you heard me say last week about one, that I thought the Fever's challenging schedule was a little bit overrated as a talking point, and a little bit of that was on me. I brought it up at times myself. But two, they need to get Aliyah Boston involved, especially in their current reality with new point guards galore, with in and out players. One of their more consistent ways of scoring, beyond just Kelsey Mitchell being just unstoppable anymore, 21 points again for her over the Storm, is that Aliyah Boston is a good enough finisher and has added so much patience and timing and rhythm and screen setting ability to her game the last 2 years in the Fever's kind of competitive window that she draws defensive attention, right? Watch the Fever play. When Aliyah Boston sets a screen, they always have somebody rotating over from the weak side when ball handlers are trapped. And if there's not a trap ball handler, there's always somebody rotating in or digging in to just kind of make it so her lane to the rim isn't there. No team wants Aliyah Boston to catch it with one player on her within 10 feet of the basket, regardless of the situation. That's why Kelsey Mitchell, Aliyah Boston 2-player game is very often that little pitch that Aliyah will do to Kelsey. Kelsey Mitchell comes around it. They're afraid of Kelsey Mitchell being so fast getting to the rim that the defense sends 2 to the ball. Aliyah Boston just catches a floating pass in the lane and gets an easy basket. Now teams are defending that with 3 players, right? That's just one example. But when 3 players are required to defend 2, someone's open. Something is there. The ball moves. The offense moves. Somebody on defense is reacting. You get more open shots that way. How many games for the Fever in the last 2-3 weeks has it been close late? One of the Minnesota games, Dallas, Washington, the win over Connecticut. Has it been close late? And the Fever's bread and butter way of getting something going is Kelsey Mitchell, Aliyah Boston 2-player game. Get Aliyah involved. And also, to add to those points, how many of those games in defeat did you walk away from it going, man, Aliyah should have been more involved? Or did you walk away thinking, man, over half of Aliyah's shots came in the fourth quarter, right? Clearly, when the chips are down in a tight game, the Fever want to get their all-star center involved in the action. And Stephanie White has told us over and over and over, and Aliyah even talked about it. I asked her about it. If you listen to last week's version of this podcast, I put the interview with Aliyah straight up in the show because I wanted her to explain it, how this point guard carousel, right? It was supposed to be Caitlin Clark and Sydney Colson. Then it was Ari McDonald and Sydney Colson. Then it was Caitlin Clark and Sydney Colson. Then it was Caitlin Clark and Ari McDonald and kind of Sydney Colson. And then it was Ari McDonald and Sydney Colson. And then you watched it all. And then it was the game with no point guards. It was Kelsey Mitchell. And then it was Odyssey Sims. And then it was Odyssey Sims and Shey Peddy. And Sophie Cunningham was the backup for like 2 seconds in there. But then it's been something and something and something and something and something the whole season. You know that. But that whole shifting of the guard impacts Aliyah more than anyone. That's what Stephanie White's point has been. That's what Aliyah talked about. And I would agree with that before they even said that. But I'm glad someone else said it so I can say that I agree with them and that it's more the team's idea than mine. Because she is a player, Aliyah Boston, is that she's not going to take the ball at the floor, but she does demand defensive pressure. So she requires interaction with the ball handler. And when the ball handler changes, their tendencies and strengths change. She has to tweak her game to be more involved. And she talked about that last year with Caitlin, and she's talked about that this year with other players. And so that 5-minute lead up, all to say, look what happened against Seattle. Aliyah Boston, 18 shots. 10 of them went in, more than any other Fever player, obviously. 27 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, just 1 turnover. When she was on the floor, they kicked butt. It was not fair. It wasn't close, right? She was just phenomenal. Let's start the game. Odyssey Sims, easy peasy on a nice screen on the tip-off that Aliyah Boston won. Then after that, Aliyah draws a foul, hits 2 free throws. Aliyah makes 2 free throws not long after that. Kelsey Mitchell wiggles free with help from Aliyah, and I can't find the third basket here, but she had 5 points, 6 points like that, right? Great start, and that never went away. What you've seen at times is Aliyah scores a bunch early, like against the Lynx over the weekend, and then she doesn't really have the same level of impact the rest of the game. It was consistent use of their fulcrum center against the Storm, who have a good defensive front court, by the way. Neka's a good defender. Gabby Williams is going to be in all defense conversations this year, as he's a good defender. Malonga off the bench is young and inconsistent, but can be a good defender, right? They have strong defensive front court talent, and they could not, for the life of them, slow down Aliyah Boston-led sets. And she finished plays, obviously, very well. She drew free throws at a high rate. That's the kind of game she can have in the right setting. If she could do that every night, that would be her standard. That's not fair. She can't do that every night because the defense will not always allow it. The synergy won't always be there. That was a very much everything goes right for the Fever kind of game. I understand that. But I think more can be expected in that kind of shot profile. 18 shots. I mean, Aliyah took 9 in one of those Lynx games last weekend. Like, she's got to be in the 14-plus range until Caitlin comes back. She's that good. And if she gets to 14, that means she was adequately involved, and the guards and the Fever were doing a good job keeping her involved. That was my biggest takeaway from the Storm game, is they finally figured that out, because it was kind of this dancing question in my own head. And obviously I'm in positions where I can ask players and coaches, so perhaps I should just burp this out. But like when Aliyah's not getting it as much as they hope she does, is it she's not demanding it? Is it they're not going to her as much as they want? Is something the defense doing, taking it away? Like, I don't think these people are dumb. I think they understand that she's a good player and should get the ball. Like, why is it not happening? And I'm not saying it's even someone's fault or like point a finger. It's just, what needs to happen for this to go the way they want? Well, they need to play the Storm and show that the blueprint works. And so that's something to keep an eye on this weekend, as the Fever have 2 important games. We'll get to that in just a second. But she was, to me, the straw that stirred the drink in that win over Seattle. That was significant, because then Kelsey Mitchell doesn't have to go crazy for 35 points to win. She can have 21 on 15 shots and skate around and draw a bunch of attention and be Kelsey Mitchell and look awesome. Like, 21 points on 15 shots is a healthy game still for her. Odyssey Sims was awesome with 22 and 6. She's had higher scoring games this season, I think, with the Sparks, but that's the kind of game that she can have. And it's been really interesting to watch her ascend with comfortability. That was very poorly said, but her first game with the Fever was not good, and she's been rock solid basically ever since. We'll see if that consistency can hold, but now that she's figured out as a point guard where her shots and the rest of her teammate shots can come from, she's been better. I mean, those 3 in particular combining for 70 points. The Storm had 75. Was so massive and a big win. And I think it started with Aliyah, and I think the guards filled in well around her to get it done. Not to subtract from anyone else. Bree Turner has done everything well of late except for finished plays. Her being a wing defensive option in a time of need has been good. Lexi Hall battled like crazy after that headbutt with Gabby Williams. The Black Eye game is coming tonight in LA. Looking forward to seeing that. Ariel Powers, we'll talk about her in the third segment. Look at her go on the glass as a wing. Just having a backup wing at all has been significant for the Fever. Shey Peddy finally missed shots, but she's been a nice table setter and important with all the health issues this team has had. Like, they got a lot from everybody to win the game. But I thought Aliyah Boston got it started. The 2 guards with their rim pressure and scoring were good. And that kind of balance and health is what the Fever will need as they venture into easily their biggest weekend of the season and a chance to set the table for one of their best seasons in like a decade. Let's talk about that here coming up. The weekend ahead, huge games. Impossible to state how huge they are and what it all means, the schedules, the playoff chase under the microscope coming up here on Locked On Women's Basketball. Before we get to any of that, we got to talk about Gametime. College football is back, and honestly, there is nothing better than the energy of tailgates and being in the stands with your fellow fans. The only downside is trying to get tickets. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices that jump at checkout. Yuck, that's why you got to use Gametime. It's the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. You can pull it up, couple taps, see amazing deals. If you want to go watch my Hoosiers and their opener against Old Dominion, or other local teams, you can do it right there. The app makes it super simple with seat views, zone deals. Just pick your section, save big. It's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than other ways of buying tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that promo code is LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Back here on Locked On Women's Basketball, the Fever Friday, Fever Report, whatever you want to call it, version of the show. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. If you're interested in the men's team in Indiana, if you're an Indiana basketball fan, I host Locked On Pacers every single day of the week as well, with very much new episodes up right now. Okay, let's keep rolling here in Feverland. Everybody knew going into this week. I talked about it last week. People can read a schedule. What was at stake? Why it was so big? But if you don't know, or you really need to be reminded of what's going on and what I have used as my benchmark for the Fever to close out the season at the level they need to, going into the week, the Seattle Storm were in 6th place. This is on Monday. The Golden State Valkyries were in 7th place. The Indiana Fever were in 8th place. And the LA Sparks were in 9th place. 8 teams make the playoffs. That 9th team will not make it. The Mystics are still technically in the hunt, and the Fever actually play them pretty soon this season too. Regardless, they played teams 6, 7, and 9, the Fever did, as they tried to clinch a top 8 spot. It could not be bigger and more impactful for their playoff odds than the week they have ahead. Beating Seattle is huge. They had the tiebreaker over Seattle. Seattle beat the Lynx a few days later, but the Fever still have a better record there. I think the win percentage might actually favor Seattle, but I can't remember. Yes, the Fever are ahead by .001 in win percentage, but they're tied in terms of games back of first place regardless. That makes that win huge. For standings, for tiebreaker purposes, the Fever beat the Storm. Their next two are against the teams in 8th and 9th. Keeping them down and away is just so massive, right? Obviously, Golden State has been a troublesome team for the Fever this year. The Sparks have been a troublesome team for the Fever this year. I don't think they have tiebreakers at stake, but they have distancing from playoff cushion coming their way. Because if you ask me, I'm not saying that I know this for sure, but my suspicion on how this is going to go is that Seattle, who has some easy games left on their schedule and only 2 very challenging games left, is probably going to make it, right? The Storm, they still play they just beat the Lynx. So they're high levels, obviously. They only have 4 more games, the Seattle Storm do. They play the Liberty, who are very good. They play the Valkyries, who are decent, but that's a huge game. And then they play the Sparks. That's a huge game. And the Sky. They have a lot of control. The Sky is, a win that most teams would expect to get. You can probably put the Storm at 22 or 23 wins. I think that's going to be enough to make it. I think the Valkyries and Sparks are the 2 teams that are the more logical teams to target, as these are the teams that will be the line of making the playoffs or not making the playoffs. And the Fever played both of them in the next 3 days. The Sparks tonight, who they've struggled with, they can't guard them. They cannot guard the Sparks. And Golden State, who they've played well against at times. That first quarter in Indy was great, and horrible against at other times. So what's actually at stake here? What's going to matter? Why is this so huge? Well, so much to dive into with this. So they play the Sparks tonight. The Sparks are currently 17-19 with 8 games to go. That's a 47.2% win rate so far. They might be a little better than that on balance because they were missing Cam Brinker on the season. They've dealt with a bunch of other injuries. But you can, if you just want to round up and be nice to account for that stuff and say the Sparks at, the full strength Sparks win about half their games, right? Half of their games. So let's just say the Sparks finish the season by winning half their games. 22. That'd be a nice finish for them. 5 more wins would be a very nice finish. I actually, if you made me say what I think in my heart of hearts, I don't think the Sparks get to 500 this year, but just hear me out for a second. Pretend for me right now that the Sparks finish the season 500 at 22 wins, and Golden State does the same, right? They're 19-18. That's 51% win rate. They've also been injured, but they're not going to get anybody back. I think their current win rate's probably about their record. So let's say that to get the 7 or 8 seed and make the playoffs, the Fever need to win 22 or 23 games. That's 2 more. That's only 2 more. And lo and behold, they play the 2 teams most directly close to them in the standings in the next 3 days, right? Now, so one, there's just an opportunity. Like, if they win either of these games, I'd put their playoff odds at above 90%. If they win both, I'd put them at basically 100. But let's go through this exercise a little more in depth, because I was just using win percentage. And I don't think that's really a fair way to do this for the rest of the season. The remaining schedule for the Los Angeles Sparks still contains the Aces, the Mercury, 2 games against Atlanta, and of course the Fever Storm. They have 2 wins that they can get against Dallas and Washington, but Washington is pesky and has been beating everybody. That is not easy. And specifically challenging here, one is they play the Fever tonight. Huge game. If the Fever win that, they'll feel great about their playoff chances. The other thing that is, I believe there's a back-to-back on the, I can't find it. Never mind. The Sparks' schedule is still challenging. 2 in a row in Atlanta next week on a road trip. That's what their challenge was, a road trip. They go to Seattle next Monday, then to Atlanta Wednesday, Friday. That's 2 toughies against a good team. Seattle's decent. The Mercury right after that. All those teams will be trying and fighting for something. Yes, the Sparks could do very well against that. I find it hard to believe they'd win all 4 of those games. All 5 of those games. 4 of those road games. So I think that them getting to 22 wins is already a rosy outlook. The Fever would have 21 if they beat the Sparks tonight, right? I know that might be hard to wrap your head around because I just said a lot of team names and a lot of numbers, but if the Fever beat the Sparks today, they have to feel extremely good about their chances to make the playoffs just because of who LA still has to play. LA's remaining, air quotes, easy games. They play Dallas at home on September 7th. Okay, Dallas is so banged up. They play the Mystics at home on this coming Sunday. The Mystics are a bad record team. They're still technically, in this playoff hunt, but falling out of it, they've lost 5 in a row. They still fight hard, but their priorities might be what they are at this point. And then every other game is challenging against a team probably playing for something. Let's talk about the Valkyries now, who the Fever play on Sunday. But that's relevant because I've heard of some people say this. Oh, good for the Valkyries. They got a bunch of time off. They're, as of me talking right now, they have not played since Sunday. They beat the Wings, and they don't play till tomorrow. They have 5 days off to practice this week. That's huge for them, huge, because they lost 3 in a row before that Wings game. They play the Mystics at home on Saturday. They can win that. Then they play the Fever. Then it's Liberty, Wings, Lynx, Storm, Lynx. We'll see what the Lynx interest in going crazy late in the season is for records, for anything of that sort. But the Fever play the Lynx in their last game, but it's not the Lynx last game. So we'll see what Lynx effort level is late in the season. But that could be a challenging schedule, right? The Valkyries playing for something, having to play the Storm's a huge game. The Liberty will be tough. That Fever game will be tough. But I think the Valkyries schedule is easier than the Sparks. If you let me guess right now, I think the Storm, Valkyries, and Fever will all make the playoffs. But if you really dive into the schedules, you see where the Fever get an advantage, both because they play both teams right around them right this weekend. If they win, I think one of them, they'll make it. But the Fever also play the Sky at home, who have not been very good. They play the Lynx in a game where the Lynx might not have that much incentive to try. And they play the Mystics late in the season, who are sliding to the finish. So, of course, you want to win every game. You want to get the highest seed you can. It's pretty close to wrapped up that the Fever can't get home court advantage. It's not over. The Fever can still win 26 games, which could, in theory, get them as high as the 2 seed. But one more Aces win, a couple more Dreamer Mercury wins, and the Fever are locked into basically 6, 7, 8, or 9. But I think they can basically secure, not mathematically, but basically secure a playoff spot if they win one game this weekend. And if they win both, I'll basically say, yeah, they're going to make it. And then it's about who are they going to play and how can they win that series and can they get healthy. Speaking of health, let's talk about hardship players, because boy, oh boy, have they been good for the Fever of late. Really good for Odyssey Sims. Shey Peddy can't miss threes. Aerial Powers, hello. We got to talk about them, their situation, when their timings line up for re-signings, how Caitlin Clark and Chloe Bibby fit into this to close out today's Locked On Women's Basketball. Before we dive into all that, let's talk about FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, less than a week away. FanDuel is making sure you are ready for kickoff with this can't-miss offer, because right now, if you're a new FanDuel customer, if you've never logged in there, you can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So many people love using FanDuel for different reasons. It fits, however, many people like to bet with their player props, with their same game parlays, or if you're watching a game, you want to get in on it, make it a little more fun, boom, you can do that. Makes everything more exciting, right? Whether you're watching your team, just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy. It's the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays or Thursdays or Fridays or whatever day your team is playing. The NFL is everywhere. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And we are back here on Locked On Women's Basketball, the Fever Report version here on Fridays. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Check out all our work at the 9, theixbasketball.com for more on the Fever and on every team. We cover every single team, several college conferences. You can go back through my archives and read stories in the Fever dating back to the Wubble if you are interested. Okay, the hardship life. I talk about this every single week because it's a changing thing for the Fever. The updates are different every time. Their situations different every time. So let's run through this. First of all, good news for the Fever that these players are finally playing well and caught up, right? Sims' first game was rough. Then Shey Peddy came in and she actually started pretty well, but then they needed Powers all of a sudden. They just needed someone new. It's a little bit of their playbook. These players now are established-ish, and they're guaranteed to at least have 2 hardships for the rest of the season. We'll see where this goes in general the rest of the way. They have 3 available right now with other absences. So let's first start with Odyssey Sims. She is currently playing on her 3rd 7-day hardship contract. You were only permitted to sign 3 with one team. 3 hardship 7 days with a team during the season, and the Fever don't presently have a standard roster spot. So they're not allowed to sign Sims to another 7-day deal, which it would be on Sunday. Saturday's her last day under her current contract. However, you can sign a player to a rest of season standard hardship contract with Colson out for the year and McDonald out for the year. That is allowed. That would be possible. So I will expect right now a strongly educated guess that Odyssey Sims will be re-signed to one such deal on Sunday, and it will not be a 7-day deal this time. What I don't quite understand is playoff eligibility for those players. My understanding is if they're tied to an out for the season player and they're on a standard full season hardship, they can. But if not, it'd be very easy on the last day of the season. It would not be fun, but the Fever could just waive Colson or McDonald and then just sign Sims to a non-hardship contract if they need her for the playoffs. So there's ways to make it so that she'll be playoff eligible, but that is her hardship reality right now. Okay, Shey Peddy. Sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought. I don't know where. Shey Peddy, she's on her 2nd 7-day right now. She's been great. These threes keep falling. It was very funny to listen back to her first press conference at practice because obviously they needed a point guard very badly. They were out of point guards. They were out of ball handlers. They lost Sophie Cunningham and had to cut a different hardship player to get a different type of one because they needed ball handling that bad. I mean, come on, man. That is just as brutal as it gets. So they bring in Shey Peddy, and everything I've been told from people who covered her before or know her was like, yeah, she's really nice. She's, very steady-handed. She'll be really fun to be around. And she comes in and she's like, I just make my threes and defend. And I said, oh, okay. That's not what you expect to hear from a point guard, but that's what she's done. She's been awesome making threes, including banking some, which is hilarious. She's been lights out as a shooter, except for that Storm game. She obviously will probably cool off a little bit, but she's been playing well as their backup 1 right now. She is eligible for her 3rd 7-day on September 2nd, which is next Tuesday. And then she would be eligible for a 3rd right before the end of the season. Or excuse me, that would be her 3rd. She's on her 2nd right now. She'd be eligible for her 3rd on the 2nd. Their last game is the 9th, so they could sign her to a standard one that last day if they need to. We'll see what the health status is, and we'll come back to Shey Peddy. You'll see why in a second. Then their 3rd one, which is possible because Powers has been out and then Clark was out for a while. Or excuse me, because Cunningham was out and Clark was out for a while. They brought in Ariel Powers. They need another wing after they lost Sophie, and they got one with Ariel Powers. So Lexi Hall is not playing a bajillion minutes a game. Chloe Baby's been out too, so they really needed forward depth. In comes Ariel Powers. She is currently on her first 7-day deal. She had been kind of okay in the league for a while, floating. I think a lot of people would disagree with that, but think she's been playing better than that. But she's been playing really well for the Fever at the stuff they need. Guarding well, really, like her first offensive play against the Lynx, under the basket, stripping somebody, knocking the ball out. Really good stuff from Ariel Powers. And her rebounding has been huge. Going up and getting it, 2 hands, secure, get the Fever running. That's how you end a possession. They need that. That's kind of been an added element. Not that their wings are like bad rebounders, but just adding another one there on the floor, especially when Natasha Howard's out of the game, gives the Fever a rebounding element they don't really have. So as long as they have 4 players out for multiple games, which they currently do, Bibby is slated to return. She's not on the injury report for tonight's game, so she's back. So that would be 4 players out still. That'd be Colson, McDonald, Cunningham, and Clark. They can keep all 3 of those players. Powers re-up day is Saturday. So tonight is her last day on her first 7-day, but they could easily sign her to another one tomorrow. But now let's pause, right? So We know for the Sparks game right now. Also, good that Chloe Bibby is coming back, by the way. The Fever could really use her spacing. I think she specifically will also help Aliyah Boston, right? It's a big deal to have somebody of that ability. Okay, so back to the injury report. So Clark, Colson, Cunningham, McDonald, that's 4. If Clark comes back, which is still the hope for the Fever, she's still doing, you saw Chloe Peterson's video in LA. She's been ramping up, doing stuff at that shoot around, right? If Clark comes back, they would only have 3 players out for the season. Only, I say that hilariously. I said only because 3 is less than 4. Having 3 players out for the season is a huge deal. Once they go down to 3, should that happen, they would not be allowed to have 3 hardship players. They can only have 2 at that point. So they couldn't have all 3 of Sims, Powers, and Peddy. They could only keep 2. I would say that with Cunningham down, with Bibby back, maybe they would just keep point guards. So the hypothetical here is that Caitlin Clark is back. And then you, as the Fever, you have Clark, you have Mitchell, you probably have Sims, I would guess. Do you really need a 4th guard? Maybe. So maybe they would keep Shey Peddy because they've been so snake bitten at ball handler that you just want to have one ready to go just in case. Or do you keep Powers, where right now your options on the wing are Lexi Hall and Chloe Bibby, who's naturally more of a 4, and kind of to move down into more of a perimeter role? That's actually an interesting debate. I could kind of see it going both ways. It'll kind of tell you a lot about their confidence in Chloe Bibby if they opt to keep Shey Peddy. Now, don't get me wrong. Having extra point guards is still valuable, and Peddy can probably play off the ball. She can keep making threes at the level that she has, but I'll be interested to see how they would, if they are in that position where they have to decide, how they would decide to do that if they were going to either, decide between Peddy or Powers, what their priorities would be. And I think Bibby returning means that it could go either way. If you made me, Tony East, decide, I would probably keep the wing in Powers and then have Clark and Sims and Mitchell be my ball handlers. But there's obviously a lot of ways that could go and ways that it could change. And we have no idea if Caitlin's going to return yet or what they want to do with any of that stuff. So their hardship situation is fascinating. It's crazy. The Wings got an emergency hardship today. They're so banged up. The Valkyries, who the Fever play on Sunday, are so banged up. It is a crazy year of injuries in the W. It's just absolutely crazy how so many things came together to make this horrible. But that is your Fever report for this Friday. I would say we'll come back and talk about it all next week, about how this weekend went and their new playoff outlook. But this is unfortunately going to be the last one of these here on the Locked On Women's Basketball feed, unfortunately. So I hope you guys have enjoyed these for the last 2.5 months that I've been doing them. It's been a blast to bring them to you. And I haven't really had a podcast to talk about the Fever ever. So this was great. If there's interest, or if somebody lets me know that they would like me to keep doing these, maybe I will find a way to keep it up. We will see where this goes, but thank you all so much for tuning in and rocking with all of them. If you have, again, the Next Hoops or the 9 is where you can find me and my work covering the team. I've got a long story coming on Chloe Bibby, hopefully over the weekend, and about her journey this season. Thank you all so much for listening today. See you very soon.